Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast. Episodes like today I shouldn't say this out loud, but are my favorite. I love, love, love when I have the opportunity not just connect with other moms, not just other moms that have experienced major life moments, but moms that have used Support Now as a part of the way that they have navigated their unique journeys. And so this is not a episode about Support Now, rather an opportunity for me to get closer to a mom that I really have been following this journey for quite some time, and to really both share with you all her story, but also to share and to learn from me about where Katie is on her journey kind of later on as she's progressed. So I am so honored today to be joined with Katie Lewis. So Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks, Jordan.
Again, I'm so grateful for your time today. As we talked about before the call, you are a medical mama of a rare disease child, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more with the audience about your little boy, Leo, and kind of what brought you to this moment.
Leo is 2.5 now. He's our third child, our third and last. When he was about 6 months old, he started having seizures. We had never experienced anything like that with our other two kids. What we thought was going to be a simple emergency room visit turned out as a week-long stay in Vanderbilt, a rare disease diagnosis with very little information about prognosis. And as a parent, you just want to know your kid is going to be okay, and doctors couldn't really tell us that. So his diagnosis changed over time when we got a second opinion from UCLA, which is where we went to get all of our treatment for Leo. So last year, we went to LA 3 times to pursue treatment with a team at UCLA that specializes in the diagnosis hemimegalencephaly, which is HME, which is what he was originally diagnosed with at Vanderbilt. And so what HME is, one hemisphere of your brain is larger than the other. And quite often the treatment is a hemispherectomy, where they either remove the whole hemisphere or they disconnect it and leave the brain tissue in there. We thought that's what Leo was going to have done as his treatment. His diagnosis changed when we got to UCLA, and a different radiologist saw his MRI and decided he didn't have HME, but he has PMG, which is polymicrogyria. So poly, many, micro, small, gyria, I think means folds. But where your brain is normally smooth, his is rough and bilateral for him in certain spots, and that causes seizures. So the long and short of it is that in August of 2024, Leo had a frontal lobectomy at UCLA. So they, through a day-long surgery, removed his left frontal lobe. That was last August, and he hasn't had a seizure since then.
Wow.
He always could again because he has bilateral PMG. But if he does start having seizures one day, the treatment will look very different. It could be controlled by medicine or an implantation or something. So we are sort of on the tail end of crunch time. And that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, so it sounds like cautiously optimistic,
Yeah,
feeling like you can be a little
cautiously.
reflective, but
I think anytime with medical parents, from what I've understood, is you're always sort of on edge and waiting for the next thing because you have been for so long. So even now on his monitor in his room, we'll hear his breath sort of change, or like there's a weird crackling sound, and we whip out our phones and like look at it to make sure he's okay. And that's just kind of how it is. There's just extra surveillance on
yeah,
him.
right, extra
Um,
sunrise at all times.
yeah.
What were you doing before like, professionally? How would you describe yourself as a mom prior to these seizures, to give people some context on, like,
Mhm.
what life actually looked for you before you had to uproot your family to LA?
It is hard to think about it, what it used to look like, because I could kind of determine what it looked like. Now, he and his needs kind of direct my life. I'm the parent who's able to be a little bit more flexible. So before Leo's diagnosis, and even before Leo, I was a writer. So I did my own creative work. I was an editor. I worked in news. And I still do both of those things. And I do some freelance writing work. And so now I'm at a place, we're sort of chatting at an interesting time where I'm trying to figure out, well, now that he's good, he's stable, what do I want for myself now? What would that look like? And I don't have those answers. So trying to figure out what shape I want this next season to take for me.
I know we talked about this a while back, but I think this is actually a really important theme in my mind, because as moms, regardless of medical complications, it's easy to get lost in your kids. It's easy to get lost in what their needs are, their schedules, their activities. And then you add, of course, the challenges that you all faced. Has it been hard, Like, talk to me about a little bit more about this, like, finding your own identity again and finding what you love, because it sounds like you have a greater appreciation for all the things after going through all of this. And it also shows you life is short and you never know. So you want to spend your time doing the things that really bring you joy.
That's a great point. Joy should be more of the focus. Yeah, I mean, when I started having kids, we have 2 older daughters. They'll be 6 and 8 this summer, and I felt very fortunate because I never felt as though I lost my identity when I had them, and I know a lot of parents go through that, especially mothers. I always felt like my same self just with kids, and I never felt like I lost myself in them. But with Leo, I mean, I tell his story daily because I have to when I'm talking to his different therapists or medical professionals because they don't know a lot. You become your child's champion, yes, but you also become the expert in their diagnosis. And that's a really tough place to be because I'm not a doctor. I didn't know anything about the brain before we started this. And now I know more than I ever wanted to know. And I don't want to be the expert. I want the doctors to be. So I do a lot of talking about Leo. And I do feel as though, I mean, and I love him. I'm glad to do it. All of that. And also at the same time, it's my life too, and I wanna figure out what I want it to look like. And in fact, when Leo was first diagnosed, I went through some grief counseling, and the counselor I worked with was incredibly generous in calling it grief counseling and acknowledging your life doesn't look like you thought it was gonna be, and it's okay to be sad about that. And that felt like a huge gift. But I do wanna be driven more by joy, and I wanna feel inspired and have goals again that feel like I can even reach them or that I have the permission to try to reach them.
And I love that you called it grief counseling, because I think there's such
Mhm.
a connotation that that means that someone has passed, that you only seek grief counseling if someone has died. I would
Yeah.
love for you to elaborate on kind of how you knew that you needed that and how you
Mhm.
got comfortable with that label, because I think it's a very misunderstood phrase or misunderstood word.
Yeah, this is hard to talk about, and I'm glad you asked because when you have children, it can be really hard to admit that you're not totally happy with how something looks. I love him. I would still take this diagnosis away from him if I could. And it's hard to say, I don't want it to look like this. I want things to be easy for him and him to be challenged by like normal things. Like I want him to have to, speak publicly or do something that would normally challenge us instead of being held back by limitations that he has no control over. That feels grossly unfair. Also, at the same time, I love being a parent, but I also want my kids to move out one day. And we don't know, will he ever live on his own? Will he go to college? Will he hold a regular job? We don't know what that future looks like for him. Whereas with our other kids, maybe they won't do any of that either, but it feels like there's more possibility for them. And so the counselor I worked with was very clear about, no, you can be mad because you want your kids to move out. You want them to flourish. And then you want to have your life again where you're not just parenting every day. It feels selfish to say that, but it's true. I want to have another season of life again. We want to travel. We want to enjoy each other. And instead of just, walking through the house and seeing all the mounds of toys everywhere, we want to have a life again. And so that future we thought we would have kind of died or might look different helps me, I think, accept it too.
I wanna applaud you for just saying that out loud. I think there's so much pressure to
Mhm.
not say that out loud because we convince ourselves that this is God's plan or this was designed for me, and
Mhm.
therefore I must accept it. And it's like, yes, and
Mhm.
you
It
can
can be
still
both.
acknowledge. Right, it can be
Yeah.
both. It can be both, and it seems, at least in this conversation, that you really are in a healthy place with accepting the diagnosis and the uncertainty of the future, while
Mhm.
also accepting at the same time that, yeah, this isn't necessarily what I wanted. And that doesn't
Mhm.
make you less of a mom. It doesn't make you less loving, but it is a reality for you. And I'm curious, like, how did your husband channel this and process it? Was it similar to you? Was it different than you? Like, how did you balance? Because it seems like you took a very, I would say, like a very mature route. I'm going to go talk to a counselor, very proactive.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, what was it like with your husband?
I mean, fortunately, we have a really strong marriage. We've been together for 21 years, something like that. So we felt it really brought us together, which I'm really grateful for because I understand I'm making this assumption, but I would assume there's a higher divorce rate among couples who have children with special needs because it's incredibly taxing emotionally, mentally, physically. I mean, I'm schlepping Leo around to all of these different appointments all the time. My husband and I could speak really honestly about what we were feeling. We could say all the scary things to each other and know that neither of us was going anywhere. We could say the scary things about that we were feeling about Leo, knowing that both of us still loved him and wanted to be his parents and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for my husband, so we had a shared experience of how we were processing this, and then, of course, we had separate experiences. I think I went more the depressed route and was sleeping a lot, and he was staying up really late. So we sort of just needed separate alone time too.
Mm,
And I think something that we've found as parents that we're really good at, and I think a lot of parents, people who are parenting together do this, where when one of you is freaking out, the other one's really calm.
yeah.
So it was really rare we were crying at the same time, which was helpful. But we did sort of have a signal, like if we're at the dinner table and all of a sudden one of us gets overwhelmed because we're seeing Leo really struggle, we were just kind of like, go to the bathroom right now. And so one of us would go cry and then we would take turns. So yeah, we had different ways of processing it, but still really processed it together because it was so lonely that we
Yeah.
really needed each other.
Actually, like, makes me tear up that you have such a relationship where you felt so secure and safe to say all the things, to feel all the things, and
Mhm.
know that it was going to be okay. And yes, statistically, divorce rates are significantly higher in families with a child with a disability for all the things you mentioned, the emotional toll, the financial toll.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned, no one dreams of this world, love their children, but they don't go into parenthood thinking this is the world that I wanna be in. So
Right.
it just makes, like, I honestly find it so touching. It's funny, I always poke fun of people that talk about their spouse as their partner in crime. I'm always like, "What crimes are you committing?" Like, "What?" Like, no one, like, it's such a funny phrase to me, and instead, what I often say is that, I work with my husband, and so it is not the same, but I call him my co-pilot.
Yeah.
And as you were describing what you experienced, especially in the beginning weeks, months, and year of Leo's diagnosis, it's that. It's like when someone needs a break and being
Yes.
that steady hand and that you're trying to get to the same place at the same time. Or sorry, you're trying to get to the same place. The way in which you do that is really a collective effort, which means both people don't need to be on at the same time. You just need to know that you have each other as backup, and that's the visual that comes to mind as I think about you and your husband. I just think when you have that relationship, it's something to be cherished, and it sounds like you do.
Yeah.
Where I wanna go next, though, is it seems like you have a really loving community, both from friends, grandparents. How did you navigate the very real challenges of a cross-country journey? I mean, you live in Nashville. Leo's
Mhm.
treatment was in LA. How did you manage that? You have 2 other children.
Lady, I don't know. I mean, this is wild because, you know, I'm a writer who lives in Nashville. I don't have funds at my disposal to be flying back and forth to LA. Like, that's not our life. So we really needed a community of people. It started with our kids' school. They have a great, like, psychologist there. They go to a Montessori school, so the classrooms are lumped together. So one of our daughters had the same teacher for 3 years. The other daughter was 2 years under with her teacher. So they had these really strong role models that they were comfortable with and that we were comfortable with sharing our story and being like, "Look, we're gonna be gone for like a month and our young kids are gonna be home." And they were able to stay in our home. My parents came and stayed with them. Our
And
dog went.
how old were Aviva and Maya at the time?
They would have been, I guess, 4 and 6
Yeah,
when
so
this
young.
started.
Yeah, really young.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and we had really only planned on going to LA once, getting it over with, and coming back. We still would have been there for 3 or 4 weeks, but the
Yeah.
first time we went, Leo was too congested for anesthesia, so they sent us home, and then we went again, and his MRI looked different, so they gave us a new diagnosis, so they didn't have a treatment, so we went back home. Like, we're not going back and forth. We're just not people who do that. So, relying on our parents and on the kids' school was kind of the only way to get through. And then our beautiful families. I mean, My aunt and uncle gifted us with airline miles to be able to make these trips. My cousin did our taxes because I wasn't thinking about that. All these small things. A friend of mine was looking for grants and different ways, or there were different companies that would like send gifts to the children who were still at home while their sibling is getting treatment.
Mm.
I think all the time about making sure my daughters aren't lost in this because, their parents left them. They're afraid we're going to leave them again. And so, a lot of the time we're finding them in our bed in the morning, which is great, but knowing the underlying reason is because 'cause they're afraid we're gonna be gone in the middle of the night is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of making up we have to do with them.
So I wanna come back to that in a second,
Mhm.
and I'm curious, how hard was it for you to accept the help from the people around you? Was that something that came
Ugh,
natural to you, or
no,
was that okay.
no. It was so uncomfortable. So, it still really is really uncomfortable to say, "I can't do this on my own. I need help." Like, I just feel, like, disgusted even saying that. It feels weak. I know it's not. Objectively, I know it's not. I would tell a friend that they were strong and brave and could count on people, but I deeply don't like that. And when Leo was first diagnosed, I didn't want anyone to know, not out of embarrassment or anything, but just I'm so private with my children, and I don't want them, treated any differently because of something that they can't help. And so putting Leo's story out there and saying, "And we need help with this," is feels gross. It's really uncomfortable, but I know that it's necessary. Also, I never want him to feel like we're ashamed or embarrassed of him because we're not. Like, that's my buddy. Like, he's my guy. So I'm so proud of him, but it's hard to ask for help.
Yeah, it is. It's so hard. It's rooted in shame as if we
Yeah.
should be expected to do things like this. I describe women like you as like these extraordinary, ordinary women, but no one was designed to figure this out
No.
on their own. Once you realize that this is an extraordinary circumstance, oftentimes you can get more comfortable with the situation. It's not as if you failed at something. It's like, no, these were the cards you were dealt, and therefore now you have to rally your village.
Yeah.
Back to the girls really fast though, you mentioned earlier around this kind of like this fear that you're gonna leave again. What has been that process of building trust with them and communicating with them? It sounds like they had to grow up not more quickly, but it sounds like this was a opportunity for them to see life a little bit differently, to see their relationship with y'all a little bit different. So
Mhm.
what has that been like? What are some of the tactics that y'all have used to strengthen that relationship, to help them explain what's going on while also in some ways allowing them to preserve their youth and their innocence on some of these things?
Yeah, we were really open with them from the beginning about what Leo's circumstances were because if for whatever reason we stepped out of the room when he's playing on the floor, we needed them to know what a seizure looked like, and I hate that. I hate that for them, that had to be part of their childhood was looking out for, like, the life or death of their brother. It shouldn't be that
Yeah.
way. And so they knew what was going on and what to look for. While we were in LA, we made sure that we FaceTimed at the same time every night so that they could rely on us to be there. One of our trips was in February, so I gotten together, like, Valentine's gifts for them, for my parents to give them. One thing that I really like that I did is I wrote them what I called love notes. So they each had a Post-it note every day with something that I loved about them, like, "I love what a good friend you are," or "I love how hard you work in math," or whatever it was, so that they had some words of encouragement from us. We had books sent to them. We tried to give them not overload them with gifts, but make them feel remembered and cared for. Also, during the day while we were in LA, I would write down things that I wanted to tell them so we didn't just get on FaceTime and stare at each other. And silly things like the sidewalk had, like, sparkles in it, and one of my daughters I knew would love that. Or I saw a dog wearing rain boots, so we told them about that. The way it looks now is they know that Leo's doing really well, and they are obsessed with him like we are, so he's talking more and more, so now they can build a different kind of sibling relationship, which is really fun to see. But, Leo goes to daycare during the day, even during the summer, and my daughters are home during the summer. So this is like after we're done chatting, I'm gonna go out and play in the little inflatable pool with them and just trying to have moments that feel like are just about them without their little brother tagging along. And I would do that even if he didn't have these circumstances because the age difference is such that there are things they want to do that he can't do because he's 2.5. So I'm just trying to, I guess, prioritize them and their needs and make them feel safe and secure and loved and all that good stuff.
It's so true, though. It's especially when you have 3 children, really anything more than 1. It's so hard to get
Ugh.
one-on-one time with your kids.
Mhm.
Quality time. And to your point, it doesn't have to be some crazy trip or dinner, like, it can be simple, but trying to connect with our children even for 5 minutes just one-on-one.
Yeah.
You do have to be so intentional with that.
You do, and I remember so for our daughters, we didn't know what sex we were having, and so when we had our 2nd daughter, I kind of flipped out in the hospital and thought, "Oh my god, I made this big mistake. Now there's 2 girls, they're always gonna be compared to one each other or to one another. I've ruined Aviva's life." I mean, really, after
By the way, those are, like, so clearly things that you felt like, think of, like, with everything you've gone through with Leo, now you're like, "What was I worried
I
about?"
know, those are small potatoes.
Yeah, really small
But,
thing.
that hormonal surge is real, and our pediatrician came in to the hospital, and she was like I think she's, like, one of 3 or one of 4 girls, and she was talking about how cool it was to have that bond, and she had said something like, "You really only need" and this must be based in evidence that I just don't have, but she had, "But you really only need 10 minutes of intentional, focused time on a child a day for them to get that, like for their love cup to be filled." And that doesn't sound like much,
Oh,
but it's hard to have intentional time with a child when you're in your home and you've got the laundry or you have a meeting or you have whatever. It's challenging.
so challenging. It's
Mhm.
so challenging. The reason why I wanted to kinda lean in there is I think that advice is applicable for anybody. I mean, it really is. Obviously, Leo has his different set of circumstances that require, to your earlier point, just, an important oversight that maybe some others might not have. And we live busy lives. The kids are busy, you're busy, and it's 10 minutes. It's amazing how hard sometimes it can be to find that 10 minutes. When you're, like, one to one, of course, we're always
Mhm.
with our children to some degree, but that one-to-one time, I love that, like, filling the love cup. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, "My love cup is way longer than that." Like, it sometimes feels short, but I think that's really special advice, and I love hearing that through all of this, the girls have been able to create their own relationship with him as he's gotten
Mhm.
older and matured. And they don't need to understand all of it. They just need to know that they're allowed to have a relationship with you, and they're allowed to have a separate relationship with him. And hopefully, that will become something that becomes foundational to their relationship in the future. Before we wrap, I just want to say a couple of things to you. I really am so impressed by how you've navigated all of this. Again, very tactically trying to care for a child in California while your 2 other children that are in, really fun, interesting years are in Nashville. I mean, that had to pull on your mama heart so strongly.
Mhm.
And then to also have to navigate professionally what's gonna happen to you and you've really had to stay so grounded, and you've had to stay so present. And from an outsider's perspective, you've just done such a beautiful job of it.
Well,
I'm really
thank
so impressed and just grateful. I really am so grateful to have seen you kind of, like, through this journey, and just wishing you all the best. And you have such a tender way of speaking that it doesn't surprise me at all that you're a writer, and I'm hoping that this podcast is just a different avenue for you to speak about your own experience. And as I told you earlier, one day your girls and Leo will listen back on a podcast like this and say, "That's my mom." And so I
Oh,
hope you're really proud of yourself.
oh, that's really dear to me. Thank you. That's so
Of
kind.
course. Of course. And as a parting note, I do, if people are interested in supporting the Lewis family, we're going to link the Support Now registry. It's a great place to see, frankly, how they've utilized it for a lot of the things that she mentioned she needed, both from updates and volunteers and money and all the things that we strive to do. And so, again, thank you for allowing us to play a small role in your family's journey. It really does. It means the world to us.
Thank you so much. I just can't tell you, like, having a place to send our community for updates or when they wanted to help but didn't know how we could have some tangible things for them to do. It was so much it was a lifesaver instead of having to send all of these individual text messages. It really helped center us and help us feel calm amidst chaos.
All the chaos. And the chaos never
Mhm.
ends. It's just that was a
No.
unique moment in time, a very unique moment in time, and again, hopefully the hardest is behind you, and you know that, again, we're always here cheering you on and as an additional resource for your community. Katie, thank you a million times over for joining us today. I don't wanna prevent you from getting time with your girls, but I look forward to more conversations with you and following Leo's journey.
Thank you so much, Jordan.